Jake sat quietly in the corner of the research station, his eyes scanning the digital reports on his screen. The station was small, tucked away on the outer rim of the galaxy. He liked it this way. No distractions. No politics, just his job. As a technician, the humans aboard the station were few, and the only alien presence was the occasional visit from medical teams or explorers. It was a peaceful life, one Jake had come to enjoy, but that peaceful life was about to change in the most unexpected way. Jake had just finished his routine maintenance check when he received an urgent message from the medical bay. The alien doctor, Dr. Rue, skilled but eccentric species known for their advanced medical technology, needed him for a quick checkup. Jake wasn't sure why he needed to go, but the medical team had always been friendly to him, and so he figured he should comply. When Jake entered the medical bay, Dr. Rue was there waiting. The doctor's alien appearance was strange but not frightening. He had soft, translucent skin, and his eyes were a deep purple that seemed to see right through him. "Jake, thank you for coming," Dr. Rue said in his calm, melodic voice. "I have a small procedure to run, just a routine checkup. It will only take a moment." Jake nodded, a bit confused. He hadn't been expecting any procedure, but he sat down on the medical chair, as instructed. "What's going on?" Jake asked. He was starting to feel a little uneasy. The doctor was acting a bit too serious for a simple checkup. Dr. Rue clicked, his tongue a sign that he was about to explain something. "It's a new procedure. It will enhance your physical well-being, as well as give us a better idea of your overall health. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe." Before Jake could respond, the alien doctor activated the machine. There was a low hum, and strange lights filled the room. Jake felt a sharp pinch in his arm, and then everything went black. When Jake woke up, everything was different. The room was silent, and he could feel a strange pressure in his chest. His body felt heavier, and there was a strange sensation in his mind. Someone else's thoughts were starting to mix with his own. He blinked and tried to move, but his limbs felt stiff. "Jake, are you awake?" Dr. Rue's voice came from across the room. Jake turned to see the alien doctor standing next to a strange crib-like structure.
Ow.
Inside, there was someone looking up at him, his breath caught in his throat. There was an infant, but not a regular human baby. The child had strange, bright eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. Its skin was a soft shade of blue, and its features were alien yet oddly familiar. "Is that ... my child?" Jake asked, still struggling to understand what was happening. Dr. Rue's expression was one of surprise, as if he hadn't expected Jake to wake up so soon. "It ... appears that way," he said hesitantly. "There was an error in the procedure. It seems your DNA was altered in the process. We were trying to enhance your biology, but the result was this hybrid." Jake's heart raced as he tried to process what the doctor had said. "This is a mistake," Jake said, his voice shaky. How is this possible?" Dr. Rue sighed. "I'm afraid the procedure has gone terribly wrong. You've been linked to this child in a way that cannot be undone. I don't fully understand the cause, but the hybrid child is a result of an unexpected reaction between your human DNA and certain alien genes." The baby, or hybrid child, reached out its tiny hand, staring at Jake with eyes that seemed far too wise for such a young face. Jake instinctively reached out, his heart overwhelmed by emotions he didn't understand. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Jake muttered. He didn't know whether to be terrified, confused, or amazed. He had no idea how to be a father to an alien child. The idea was absurd. He was just a technician. He wasn't ready for this doctor. Rue, seeing Jake's confusion, placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Jake, you must understand that the child is not dangerous. In fact, it is highly intelligent for its age. It will grow quickly, but there is something we must consider. The child's origin and your bond with it may draw unwanted attention from other factions in the galaxy. This child is not an ordinary being. It could be key to something much larger. Then we understand." Jake looked down at the hybrid child again, its small, delicate features almost too perfect. The baby's strange eyes locked onto his, as if it already knew who Jake was. The child's grip tightened around Jake's finger, and a deep warmth flooded through him. For the first time, Jake felt a sense of protectiveness he never knew he was capable of. "What do I do now?" Jake asked, his voice soft but determined. Dr. Rue hesitated. "There are forces in the galaxy that will want to take the child. It is a part of something much bigger than a simple medical error. You must be careful. I advise you to keep the child hidden. There are powerful people who would do anything to get their hands on it." Jake nodded, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't prepared for anything. But one thing was clear. He couldn't just walk away. His child, no matter how strange or unexpected, was now his responsibility. And Jake would protect it, no matter what. Jake had never felt so out of his depth. It had only been a few days since he had learned that he was now the father of an alien child, and already his life had taken a sharp turn into chaos. The hybrid baby was everything Dr. Rue had promised: intelligent, curious, and strangely calm. But the fear Jake felt grew with each passing day. How could he protect this child when he didn't even understand what it was or how to raise it? Jake paced back and forth in the small, windowless room that he had been given to stay in. Child, a baby that he still struggled to think of as his own, lay in a cot nearby, sleeping peacefully. It had bright blue skin and large purple eyes that sparkled like stars. Despite the calm, the strange, unsettling feeling gnawed at Jake. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Jake?" Dr. Rue's voice came through the door. "We need to talk." Jake opened the door, his mind racing with questions. Dr. Rue stood in front of him, his face serious. "It's happening sooner than I expected," he said quietly.
What?
"There are already rumors about the child, and someone is coming for it."
Oh.
Jake frowned. "Who?" The alien doctor hesitated, clearly reluctant to give Jake the full story. "I've heard whispers from other planets. Factions that have been looking for something like this child for years. We cannot trust anyone, Jake. If they find out what it is, they won't stop until they have it." Jake's heart sank. He'd known things weren't going to be easy, but this was worse than he imagined. "So what do we do?" he asked, his voice tight with worry. "We have to leave," Dr. Rue said. "Cannot stay here any longer. It's not safe for you or the child." The thought of leaving everything behind, the life he had built on the station, filled Jake with a strange sense of dread. But the reality was undeniable. There was no other choice. He had to protect this child. The doctor handed Jake a small metal device. "This will help keep you hidden. It's a cloaking device, powerful enough to keep you out of sight from the searchers.
I use
it wisely, and don't let anyone see it. It won't last long, but it will give you time to escape." Jake took the device, his hands shaking slightly. "Thank you, Dr. Rue." Dr. Rue nodded. "I'll prepare a ship for you to leave the station. Be careful, Jake. There's no going back once you make this decision." As the doctor turned to leave, Jake felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. He was responsible for a child he had no idea how to care for, but the growing threat against them made it clear he had no choice but to protect the hybrid child at all costs. Later, that evening, Jake gathered his things and quietly packed his bag. He made sure to keep the child's small blanket close, as if that would offer some comfort. The little one had been asleep for most of the day, its glowing eyes now soft with slumber. He left the room in silence, not wanting to draw attention. To himself, as he made his way through the dark halls of the station, the cloaking device in his pocket felt heavy. He was a man on the run now, was nothing but a child and a faint hope of escape. When he reached the docking bay, he found the ship that Dr. Rue had promised. It was small but sturdy, sleek, and ready for departure. The low hum of the engine as it powered on made Jake's heart race with a mix of fear and excitement. Just as he stepped onto the ship, a sudden shout rang out from behind him. "Stop right there!" Jake spun around, his breath catching in his throat. 3 armed figures stood at the entrance to the docking bay, their weapons aimed directly at him. They were alien soldiers, dressed in dark armor and carrying energy rifles. The insignia on their chests looked unfamiliar, but Jake could tell they weren't friendly. "Give us the child!" one of them barked. His voice was harsh, and the other 2 soldiers took a step forward, their weapons still trained on Jake. Jake's heart raced. He hadn't expected them to find him so soon. It only just boarded the ship, but now it seemed like escape would be impossible. "What do you want with the child?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The soldier sneered. "You don't understand, do you? That child isn't yours to keep. It's a valuable asset. Hand it over, and we'll spare your life." Jake stepped back, his mind racing. There was no way he was going to hand over the child to these strangers. Not after everything that had happened. He had promised to protect it, and he was going to keep that promise. "Leave us alone," Jake said, his voice trembling but firm. "You'll have to go through me first." The soldier's face twisted with a cruel smile. "If that's how you want it, so be it." Jake's fingers instinctively gripped the cloaking device in his pocket. He didn't know if it would be enough, but he had to try. Without thinking, he activated it, and the ship and everything around him seemed to vanish into thin air. The soldiers were caught off guard, looking around in confusion as the ship disappeared from sight. Jake could barely breathe as he held the device in place, the faint outline of the ship barely visible to his eyes. They were only a few seconds away from being discovered when, finally, Jake heard the soft hum of the engine come to life. The ship was cloaked, and they were safe for now. He quickly climbed aboard, carrying the hybrid child as carefully as he could. His pulse was racing, and the weight of what he had just done hit him. He had no idea where to go next or how to keep the child safe. But he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The real danger was only just starting. With a deep breath, Jake set the coordinates and launched the ship into space. He was no longer just a technician. He was a father known. Nothing would stop him from protecting. The days in space felt strange to Jake. As the small ship cruised through the quiet vastness of the galaxy, he couldn't shake the constant feeling of being hunted. Every time he looked at the hybrid child, now safely tucked in a small crib on the ship, he remembered the soldiers' faces, their threats. The thought that someone would go to such lengths for a child unsettled him. The hybrid baby had changed his life in ways Jake had never imagined. He still didn't fully understand how or why it had happened, but he knew one thing: this child was special. It wasn't just the eyes that shined with an odd glow or the unusual skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the ship. There was something in the way it looked at him, like it understood more than any baby should. But understanding what? Jake had been pacing around the small cabin when the baby's soft voice broke his thoughts. He turned, startled to see the child looking at him, its large, deep eyes blinking slowly. "Are you hungry?" Jake asked, unsure of how to care for a baby, especially one from another species. I had no idea what it needed or what it ate, but he had to try. Reaching for the small container Dr. Rue had provided, Jake poured a tiny amount of the formula into a small feeding bottle. The child's eyes followed his every move, never breaking contact. The baby's gaze softened. Slowly it reached out. With small hands, Jake froze for a moment, not sure what to do. Was this normal? Should he be worried? But then the baby made a soft, gurgling noise that seemed almost like a giggle. And Jake found himself smiling in spite of the overwhelming situation. Jake carefully placed the bottle near the baby's lips, and the child began to drink. Jake marveled at the ease with which the baby accepted it. It was a strange comfort in the midst of chaos. As the baby fed, Jake settled into the seat beside it. He couldn't help but think about the future. What would happen when they reached the next planet? He had no plan, no allies, and no real idea of where to go. But the thought of returning to the station, turning to the people who would stop at nothing to take the child, was out of the question. Suddenly, a low beep interrupted Jake's thoughts. He glanced at the console. The ship's communication. The system was flashing with an incoming message. He reached over and activated the display, but no words appeared. Instead, a strange symbol flickered across the screen, a symbol Jake had never seen before. It wasn't an ordinary transmission. It wasn't a call for help or a distress signal. It was something more. Jake leaned closer, trying to make sense of it, when the symbol suddenly vanished. The screen returned to normal, but the message was clear. Someone had been tracking them. His heart skipped a beat. They weren't alone. Someone was watching them, and it wasn't just random pirates or scavengers. The symbol looked like a royal Sela mark he'd seen once before. Oh, a chill ran down his spine as he remembered the conversation with Dr. Rue. The doctor had warned him about the child's importance, but Jake had never expected it to go this far. This child was not just a hybrid by accident. It was the key to something. What that something was, Jake wasn't sure. But it seemed like the galaxy would stop at nothing to find out. He turned to the baby, who had finished the bottle and was now looking up at him with those strange, bright eyes. It felt as if the child could see right through him, and for the first time, Jake wondered if the child knew more than he did. The ship was quiet for a long while. The stars outside seemed to blur into a sea of endless blackness as Jake steered the ship toward the nearest planet, hoping for some answers. But the truth was, he had no plan. He didn't know where to go or who to trust. As he thought about the royal seal and the mysterious message, his mind wandered to the woman who had first introduced him to the idea of royalty, the Princess Kelia. He had barely spoken to her, but something about her had felt different. There had been an intensity in her eyes, something that made him feel like she knew more than she let on. Could she be part of this puzzle? Before he could think more on the matter, another beep sounded from the console, this time louder. The message had returned. This time, words appeared on the screen. "Jake, this is Kelia." He nearly fell out of his seat. How had she known where to find him? "I know you're in danger. The child is the key to a power struggle that involves not only my people, but others far more dangerous than you realize. I can help you, but you must trust me." Jake's breath caught in his throat. Kelia knew about the child. She knew more than he did, and he was starting to wonder if she had the answers he was searching for. But could he trust her? Is this all part of a bigger plan? "I don't know what you're talking about," Jake said out loud, though he wasn't speaking to anyone. "What's going on?" But before he could finish his sentence, a new message appeared, cutting off his thoughts. "Meet me on Caloria Prime. We can talk more there. I'll explain everything." The message ended, and the screen returned to normal. Jake stared at it for a long time. Caloria Prime was a large trade hub. It was known for being neutral ground, a place where different species came to negotiate and strike deals. If Kelia was offering to meet him there, then it must mean that she had some kind of power or at least influence. The thought of meeting her made Jake nervous. He knew he had no choice. He had to find out what was happening. He needed answers. "Caloria Prime," Jake whispered, his voice heavy with uncertainty. He set the course for the planet and took a deep breath. He didn't know what awaited him there, but one thing was clear. This child, this mysterious hybrid, had a much bigger role too. Play in the galaxy than he could have ever imagined. And the galaxy would soon... Jake's mind raced as the ship cruised toward Caloria Prime. The stars outside were a blur, a steady stream of light rushing by in the emptiness of space. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The message from Princess Kelia had been clear, but what exactly did she mean by the child is the key? Was the child truly that important? And why was Kelia involved? As the ship approached the planet, Jake adjusted the controls, trying to focus on the task at hand. He couldn't afford distractions, not with the danger following them. Every time he thought about the soldiers back on the station, the growing threat they represented, a chill ran through him. His hand gripped the console tightly, and he glanced at the crib beside him. The baby was sleeping peacefully, its small chest rising and falling with each breath. There was something about the child that seemed to hold the universe's weight, something bigger than he could understand. Jake wasn't sure how or why he had become its protector. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let anyone take it away. A beep from the communications system interrupted his thoughts. It was a priority message. Someone was trying to contact him. Jake hesitated before accepting the message. The screen flickered to life, revealing a stern, emotionless face. It was a man, an alien whose face was sharp, almost feline, with narrow eyes and a permanent scowl. His skin was a shade of dark gray, and his clothing was formal, adorned with intricate designs that looked like symbols of power. "Jake," the alien said, his voice cold and commanding. I am Commander Varric. You have something that does not belong to you." Jake's stomach dropped. He had a feeling this was coming, but hearing it said out loud made it real. "What do you want?" Jake asked, his voice low and steady. Varric's eyes narrowed. "You have the child, the hybrid. You have no idea what kind of trouble you're in, do you? That child is the key to something far more important than you realize. If you hand it over now, we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Jake clenched his fists. "I'm not giving you the child." Varric's expression didn't change. "Then you and the child will die." The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He knew he was in danger, but hearing it so directly was different. His heart pounded as he tried to stay calm, knowing this was only the beginning. Varric didn't seem like someone who would hesitate to follow through on his threat. "What do you want with the child?" Jake asked, trying to buy himself some time. Varric leaned closer to the screen, his sharp features filling the display. The hybrid is the key to unlocking the power of an ancient technology. Well, it was meant to be controlled, but someone made a mistake, and now it's a threat. The child must be returned, or the consequences will be severe." Jake's mind raced. Ancient technology. This was more than just a mistake, more than a simple hybrid child. He was holding on to something powerful, something that could change everything. And there were people who would stop at nothing to get their hands on it. "I'll never give it to you," Jake said firmly, his voice trembling but resolute. "No one is taking the child from me." Varric's lips curled into a thin, mocking smile. "We'll see about that." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Jake staring at the blank screen. His hands were shaking, his thoughts clouded with fear. There was no going back now. The stakes were higher than ever. He had to get to Caloria Prime and find Kelia, but the threats were escalating faster than he could handle as the ship descended into the atmosphere of Caloria Prime. Jake felt the weight of the situation pressing on him. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. The planet below was a hub for all kinds of species, a place where trade was done. Deals were struck, and secrets were hidden. It seemed like the perfect place to find someone who could help him understand what was happening. But as he touched down on the planet's surface, Jake knew that every move he made from here on out would be watched. Every decision would carry the risk of someone taking the child away from him. Couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Jake stepped out of the ship, the cool air of Caloria Prime hitting him like a wave. The bustling spaceport was filled with activity. Aliens of every shape and size moved quickly through the terminal, most of them too busy to notice him. He carried the baby in a small carrier, wrapped up to keep it hidden. As he moved through the crowd a few blocks away, a small, inconspicuous building caught his eye. It looked like a low-key cafe, but Jake had a feeling that it was more than it seemed. He didn't know why, but his gut told him this was where he needed to be. As he entered, the door slid open with a soft hiss, and Jake was greeted by a familiar voice. "Jake, over here." He turned to see Princess Kelia sitting at a table in the corner, looking calm but serious. Her eyes met his, and he could see the weight of everything she had been through. She wasn't just royalty, she was someone who had likely seen far too much of the galaxy's darker side. "You came," she said softly. "I wasn't sure you would." Jake walked over and sat down across from her. The child shifted in its carrier, as if sensing the tension in the room. Jake reached down and adjusted the blanket around it. "Things are getting worse," Jake said, his voice quiet. "Yeah. I just got a message from someone named Varric. He wants the child. I'm Messiah, and he said that if I don't give it to him, we'll both die." Kelia's expression hardened. "Varric," she muttered. "He's one of the worst. He'll stop at nothing to get what he wants." Jake looked at her, waiting for her to explain. "Who is he?" Kelia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Varric is a commander for one of the most dangerous factions in the galaxy. He's obsessed with the power the hybrid child can unlock. And if we don't stop him, he'll bring chaos to every planet in the system." Jake felt the weight of her words sink in. The situation was far worse than he could have ever imagined. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let anyone take the child. Not now, not ever. Kelia's gaze softened. "We need to move. Quickly. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to protect the child." Jake nodded, his resolve hardening. Then let's go. Whatever we have to do, I'm ready. And as they prepared to face the dangers ahead, Jake knew that the real fight was only just. The atmosphere on Caloria Prime felt heavy. Jake and Kelia had only just arrived, but it seemed like the entire galaxy had already taken notice of their presence. The streets were busy with alien traders, travelers, and merchants, but Jake could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just the usual hustle and bustle of a trade hub. No, there was something different, something dangerous. Kelia led the way through the crowded streets, her steps confident despite the storm brewing in her eyes. She had changed since Jake had first met her, no longer the soft-spoken princess, but a woman determined to fight for what she believed in. Jake kept close behind her, still carrying the child in the small carrier. He couldn't let his guard down, not for a second. The threats had been growing ever since Varric's warning. And now, with Kelia by his side, he felt like they had a fighting chance. But there was still so much they didn't know. "Where are we going?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice low. "Somewhere safe," Kelia replied without looking back. "I have a contact here, someone who can help us figure out what Varric is after." Jake nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure how much help they would find in the busy, chaotic world of Caloria Prime. This was a place where deals were made and broken in the blink of an eye. Who could Kelia trust here? They reached a building that looked nothing like the others. It was an old structure, its exterior worn and weathered from years of use. But something about it felt solid, like it had withstood countless storms. Kelia approached the door and pressed a button beside it, causing it to slide open with a soft hiss. Inside, the air was cool, and the walls were lined with shelves full of strange artifacts and technology that Jake could barely recognize. Tall figure stood at the far end of the room, his back turned to them. But Jake could sense the power in the man's presence. Kelia stepped forward, her tone firm. "Varric is making his move. We need to act fast." The man turned around, revealing a face that was as calm and calculating as Kelia's. He had silver hair, which was rare among most species, and his eyes were sharp, glimmering with an intelligence that seemed to assess every detail of the room. "This is all happening faster than I expected," the man said. "You've brought the child here?" Jake stepped forward, holding the child carefully. "Yes," he said. "We need help. Varric has made it clear he's coming for us." The man nodded slowly, his gaze flicking between Jake and the child. "The hybrid," he murmured, his voice low. "It holds the key, doesn't it? The key to the lost technology." Kelia shot the man a sharp look. "Don't speak of it so casually," she warned. "We don't know what kind of power it has, only that we can't let Varric or anyone else take it." The man nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He moved toward a table in the center of the room and motioned for Jake and Kelia. "To sit, I'll help you, but first, we need to understand what Varric is after. There are rumors, whispers of an ancient weapon, something that could reshape the balance of power in this galaxy." Jake's stomach tightened. "And the child is connected to this weapon?" Kelia's eyes darkened. "Yes. We don't know how, but the child is the key to unlocking its power. That's why Varric and others like him will stop at nothing to get it." The man nodded and began tapping on a nearby console, pulling up various holographic images and documents. "There's a place, an old forgotten station on the edge of the galaxy. It's a relic from a time long past, one that has been sealed off. But if you want to stop Varric, you'll have to go there. The hybrid's DNA might be the only way to activate what's inside." Jake looked at Kelia, feeling the weight of the decision. "We don't have a choice, do we?" Kelia's expression softened for a moment, her royal demeanor slipping just a little. "No, we don't." With a deep breath, Jake looked down at the child. It was still so small, so innocent. How could something so pure be the key to something so dangerous? The man continued speaking, his voice steady as he spoke of the forgotten station. "It's not far from here. I can guide you there, but you'll need to be careful. There are forces at work that you can't even begin to imagine." Kelia nodded. "We'll go, but I'll need your help getting past Varric's forces. We can't afford any more surprises." The man smiled, a small, knowing smile. "You've come to the right place." As they prepared to leave, Jake Mind raced with thoughts of the journey ahead. Still had so many questions, so many things he didn't understand. The child, the royal power struggles, and the ancient technology, it was all too much for him to process. But one thing was clear. The galaxy was in turmoil, and he was at the center of it. Kelia turned to him as they walked toward the door. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice firm but with a hint of uncertainty. Jake looked down at the baby, still wrapped in the small carrier, and took a deep breath. "I have to be." With that, they stepped out into the night, ready to face whatever came. The atmosphere on Caloria Prime was charged with tension as Jake, Kelia, and the child made their way to the Forgotten Station. The streets seemed busier than usual, as if the entire galaxy knew something was about to happen. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The closer they got to their destination, the more the weight of the situation pressed on him. His heart raced. Everything was at stake now. The child, this innocent being, was the key to unlocking something powerful, something dangerous. And Varric was going to stop at nothing to claim it. "I don't like this," Jake muttered, his eyes scanning the crowd around them. "It feels like we're walking into a trap." Kelia glanced at him, her face set in a determined expression. "It might be a trap, but we have no choice. We have to move fast. If Varric gets to the station first, there will be no stopping him." Jake nodded, but the unease in his chest only grew. The child nestled securely in the carrier, seemed oblivious to the danger, its bright eyes blinking up at Jake with an almost unnatural calmness. It was as if the child knew something they didn't, something far beyond their understanding. The station was located on the edge of the city, hidden in plain sight beneath a layer of decaying infrastructure. It was an old structure, abandoned long ago. The surrounding area had fallen into disrepair, with overgrown plants and rusted metals scattered across the ground. The air felt thick with the weight of history. As they approached the entrance, Kelia turned to Jake. "Stay close. The station is well guarded. Varric's men won't hesitate to stop anyone who gets too close. I'll lead the way." Jake followed her, his mind racing. How had it come to this? He was just a technician, a simple man with no idea that he'd one day be caught up in a galactic war. But now, he was the father of a hybrid child who was at the center of everything. It was hard to believe. The doors to the station were heavy, ancient, and slightly cracked. Kelia didn't hesitate as she approached them, activating a hidden mechanism to unlock the entrance. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit hallway inside. It smelled of dust and age, like no one had stepped foot here in centuries. "We're not alone," Kelia said softly, her hand on the blaster at her side. Jake didn't need to ask what she meant. He could already hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching. Without warning, several figures emerged from the shadows, Varric's men, their eyes cold and their weapons ready. "Step aside, princess," one of them growled. "We're here to take the child. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't going to let them take the child. Not now, not ever. His hand instinctively went to the blaster at his waist, and Kelia stood firm beside him, her eyes locked on the enemy. "You'll have to go through me," Jake said, his voice steady. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. Kelia's hand brushed against his arm, a silent gesture of support. She was ready to dot. The tension in the air was thick as both sides stared each other down. And then, without warning, a blaster shot rang out. Jake ducked instinctively, pulling Kelia down with him. The shot missed, but it wasn't just a warning. It was the start of a fight. "Go," Kelia shouted, and they both scrambled for cover. As the enemy fired again, Jake could feel the heat of the blaster shots narrowly missing him as he crouched behind a nearby column. He didn't know how much longer they could keep this up. Kelia's voice was clear as she barked orders. "Need to move now." With the blaster fire intensifying, Jake and Kelia moved quickly, weaving through the station's dark, narrow hallways. They couldn't afford to be caught out in the open. The child, still safe in the carrier, was quiet, as if it knew the danger was real. They reached a small, hidden room at the back of the station, and Kelia immediately began working on a control. Panel 2, access the facility's deeper levels. Jake kept watch at the entrance, heart pounding, eyes scanning every shadow. Come on, come on. Kelia muttered as she typed quickly on the panel. This station's security is ancient, but I can still get us through. Jake's mind was racing. He could hear the sound of footsteps getting closer. Soon Varric's men would catch up. He couldn't let them take the child, not when they were so close to the truth. Kelia finally turned to him. We're in. Let's move. They rushed down the narrow corridor that opened up into a vast chamber. The walls were lined with old technology, some of it completely unrecognizable to Jake. This was the heart of the station, the place where the secrets of the hybrid child lay. The room was silent, save for the hum of machinery. Jake stopped dead in his tracks when he saw what was ahead of them, a massive door, ancient and covered in strange symbols. The door seemed to pulse with energy, as if it were alive, waiting for something to activate it. That's it, Kelia said quietly, her voice filled with awe. That's the key. Jake stepped forward, the child still in his arms. The door was the final barrier. But how would they open it? What did the child have to do with this ancient technology? Before Kelia could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hall. Varric's men were getting closer. Do it now, she urged, feeling the pressure mounting. Kelia rushed to the door, pulling a small device from her belt. A slot on the door and a low mechanical filled the room. Slowly, the door began to open, revealing a hidden chamber inside. Just as the door fully opened, Varric's voice echoed through the hallway. You're too late, princess. Jake turned to Kelia, determination in his eyes. Let's finish this. And as the door opened, they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever